Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Jed Goggin. This evening we warmly welcome Squadron Leader Brock Bryce, retired, representing the Air Force Association. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Service Clubs Association, and we welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. Now, if you're able, I please invite you to stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Thank you. If you wish to and you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read just one of the stories behind those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant James Hedley Abraham. James Abraham was born on the 11th of November 1927 in Blenheim, Queensland, to August and Mina Abraham. His father was a dairy farmer and he had at least 2 brothers and 3 sisters. He was fond of tennis and cricket. Abraham attended Manly State School and then Brisbane State High School. He received a first-class pass in arithmetic in his entrance exam for Queensland University and studied accountancy with the firm Lightband and Donaldson. He found work as an office boy and went on to become an audit clerk. On the 7th of July 1942, Abraham enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force, aged 20. He trained as an air bomber and embarked at Melbourne for overseas service on the 6th of March 1943, arriving in Canada later that month. As a part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,500 RAAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, air gunners, and flight engineers who, throughout the course of the war, joined the Royal Air Force squadrons or Australian squadrons based in Britain. Abraham arrived in the United Kingdom in September 1943, and the following February was promoted to Flight Sergeant. In July, he was posted to number 467 Squadron, Royal Australian Air Force, as part of Bomber Command. The squadron flew the 4-engine Avro Lancaster heavy bomber. Just before 11:30 p.m. on the night of the 20th of July 1944, Abraham and his crew set off from Waddington, England, for a major raid on the railway centre of Courtrai in Belgium. The squadron committed 14 aircraft to the mission, and Abraham was the bomb armour in Lancaster, Papa Oscar Echo. Throughout the raid, although the raid was ultimately a success, number 467 Squadron lost 2 crews. One of them was Flight Sergeant Abraham's. It failed to return to base, and it was later deemed to have been hit by enemy fire. In the Belgian village of Kazerk, witnesses saw the aircraft flying homewards at around 2 a.m. on the 21st. It was in flames and crashed 3 kilometres from the village church. There were no survivors. Also on board was British Sergeant Leslie Arcus and Australians Flying Officer David Barlow and Flight Sergeants Edward Freem, Maurice Jones, Jack Olson and Robert Scott. The squadron's wing commander wrote to Abraham's parents to express his sympathy. He wrote, "In the loss of your son, the squadron had been deprived of an air bomber of great promise whose characteristic skill and courage inspired each one of us." After the war, the remains of Commonwealth servicemen buried in Europe were examined and identified where possible. Abraham was identified and buried with his crewmates at Kazerk. He was reinterred under the inscription, "Blessed are the dead which died in the Lord." Flight Sergeant James Abraham's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is listed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant James Hedley Abraham, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old,
as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We'll leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. Wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.